Amateur meeting number 72, Saturday, September 8th, 2012. The elastic band broke and kept on breaking. It's been a long time since I made my way to the Eddie Wright Speedway playground. You can forget all about Speedway quite easily. You don't go for a long time, the thought recedes to the back of your mind, time passes by, and once again it's years since you have been. I have Sunday and Monday off. This meeting was on Saturday, so I thought I'd go there and reacquaint myself with what Speedway is, or what I thought it was. Having not been for at least 6 months, it always takes a lot of motivation to hit the road. The weather forecast said the sun would be shining, it would be a brilliant day. I was hoping it would be, and we would soon find out. I was going to email Richard I was coming, that I would be bringing rain and a cold wind, because otherwise I wouldn't feel at home. It was a sunny day on Friday when I thought that thought. I thought it would be a good idea to have a laugh. Not a problem when the weather forecast said it was going to be a wonderful day on Saturday. Just as I sat down to write that email, though, an ominous black cloud appeared overhead, so I changed my mind about that email. After all, we didn't want to tempt the fate, did we, and upset the locals. It was a steady drive down, no rush to get there, a meal along the way to set me up for the day, and it was a good job I did. The coffee bar was closed, so as there was no chance of a sausage sandwich today. It was a good job I brought my flask of coffee and the sandwiches with me, wasn't it? Eventually I arrived, driving down the final bumpy few yards into the stadium car park. I noticed the gate was closed. Expletives followed. Could it be the day's meeting wasn't going to be on? And I'd driven all this way for nothing? More expletives. I realized one gate was closed, the other one was open. A deft trick, or is that a deaf one, to confuse an old man, unsure in which direction he was heading. There were vehicles there, signs of life, people in the car park glancing my way, looks on their faces saying, "Ooh, expletive, are you?" It was great to be alive and at the Eddie Wright Speedway playground once again. I thought I ought to go and get myself a programme of the day's events. I knew there would be over 60 races to be run. There always is. People were queuing at the office to sign in. A lady stood at the head of the line saying she'd forgotten her highlighters. I checked to see if I had brought mine. I waited patiently in the queue. Richard was sat there, oblivious to my presence, showing off his knobbly knees, a tribute to the shining sun. Then all of a sudden he spotted me, welcomed me home like the prodigal son. He didn't have a fatted calf for me, or a sausage sandwich already cooked and wrapped up in a lovely bread bun. No, he had none of this for me. What he did have was a programme, and when I asked him if he needed assistance this day, I knew he would have a red flag with my name written on it. The track looked very wet to my age-old practised eye. It looked like a muddy swamp, a lumpy gritty mud pie. I was sure that the sun that was shining would soon dry it all out. Also, as my aged limbs now ache a lot, I found myself a chair that I could sit down upon. The days are done when I can stand up on that centre green for hours on end, freezing my whatnots off. I sat there for quite a while, and then a little while longer. I was waiting for the meeting to start, for as you know, the absence of Speedway in my life makes me all the more fonder for it to begin. The clock and the time itself clicked by, and eventually you wonder why, at 15 past the hour of 1, that the meeting wasn't underway. More to the point, there was something missing. That's something all good flag wavers rely on, and that is a good red flag to hold in your hand, to wave the passing riders by, in case one of them fall off. It was obvious something was amiss, as Richard stood pensive at the gate. "Oi, Richard," shouted little old me, "where's my flag, mate? Without it I am redundant, and I might as well not have come." Struck by that indisputable logic, and the fact no one else had a flag to wave either, Richard bolted into the pits like a mighty steed, soon returning with a handful of flags, saying, "Here they are, take your pick." I said, "Even though it appears standards are slipping, Richard, it's a no contest, mate. It's a red flag for me." Finally, and at long last, the meeting began with Heat 4. Don't ask me why, but I knew though the young men riding weren't those I thought they were. I did think that this was a new way of organising a meeting, to make it more exciting. The young lads out first got to grips with the track. Those who followed ended up in a heap on the first bend. The track was greasy, but it wouldn't be long before clouds of dust would rise up, and those lads were back on their bikes again. There are those who ride each time I come, some simply there for fun. There is the older end. Someone told me there was a man aged 66 there, all the way from Edinburgh, just to get to grips with that greasy track. Some of the racing can be monotonous, other races can be thrilling, and there are those that can be downright boring. All ages come there to learn the trade and see what they can do. There is a place there for you if you want to have a go. There's always room for new blood at the Eddie Wright Speedway playground. I met an old trooper there who paints pictures of Speedway with his camera and his paintbrush. It had been a long time since I last saw him, and it's always a pleasure to reacquaint myself with this Speedway artist. We compared notes on physical ailments, and realised then each time we met we were a little bit older. Good job it was a warm day, for I'm sure we'd freeze if the weather were colder. There also was the master of track maintenance, the owner of the track, riding round on his grading machine. He drove the water truck to spray on the track when the dust began to rise once again. It took so long that I thought he ought to drive it through the fence on the fourth bend, just for old time's sake, as he did once before when he lost his way on the track he owns. Once the racing got under way, you would have thought things would run smoothly, and we would get through the scheduled 67 races in the 4 hours allotted. It was then that the elastic band broke. How did I know the elastic band was broke? A voice from the starting line in the direction of Richard shouted, "The elastic has broken." That's how I knew, little old perceptive me. "Where is the elastic?" shouted a plaintive voice across the dusty track. There didn't seem to be an answer till someone shouted back, "In the box." I expected someone to shout back, "In which box?" I was going to shout back, "The one in the cupboard in a house far away. You'll have to send someone to fetch it, and hope they get back with it today." I didn't, of course, because that would have been stretching incredulity to stretching point. Tee-hee. The racing resumed, and as I said to the man whose name I always look for when Richard posts the names of those riding that day, "I always look for your name," I said to Gary O'Hare, "for when you are there I always know I will see some top-class racing before the day is through." The problem for Gary, of course, is as he himself pointed out, because he was a former rider, everyone there saw him as someone they had to beat. Nice for those who stand on the side and watch the day go by, not for those who have to ride against those who have something to prove. All the more incredible when you realise, as Gary said to me, I only ride once a month. Sometimes it's hard to get into the groove the way that I like to do. There was some impressive racing from Enningloof and Tyson Snow, very impressive indeed. Being able to see that kind of riding makes it all worthwhile travelling the 60 miles I have to do to get to see these men at work. I still can't get my head around the fact that local people aren't queuing up to help out at the track. If Halifax had been round the corner from me when their track was open, and they were running meetings like these, I would be biting their hands off to let me help out. Then that race came around when there was a bad crash on the first bend. A rider came off, and according to the way people were rushing around, it seemed to me the rider concerned had his foot trapped somewhere in the bike. There was a lengthy delay before they were taken into the ambulance. The time had moved on at this point, and I had to leave at 5 p.m. They had to send for an ambulance from the hospital. I decided to leave as it was 4:30 p.m, and I knew by the time they restarted the meeting I would have to go anyway. As always, I was glad to have moved my aching bones out of the familiar to reacquaint myself with the sport of ours. There is always someone there to reminisce about what had gone before. Better we agreed to have something to talk about other than the hot topics of today. These days it seems the same old topics are recycled over and over again, giving the impression Speedway is a sport going nowhere except to where it's already been. It's a circular thing, if you see what I mean. As Richard says, it's good to see new young faces appearing at the track. There is always hope for the future when they turn up. There may even be those who criticise the fact there were young children there riding the track. They could not have been more than 5 or 6 years old, riding around on their very tiny bikes. The announcer was almost apologising that they were riding for 4 laps, though it didn't matter to me. They were, as it gave me a chance to sit down, have a sandwich, drink my coffee and ease my aching bones. You never know, we could have been looking at a new world champion in embryo. I had to go. I don't know when I will return. It must have been 6 months since I last saw some speedway racing. In that time, as we all know, the elastic band has broken in speedway in so many ways, and for one it has broken permanently, and for all of us, none of it will be the same again. I drove past the ambulance as I was leaving the track. I could see they were transferring the unfortunate rider to the ambulance that had come from the hospital. I hope all is well with him and the injury is not bad and the rider will return to ride again. Meanwhile, I returned to the mundane, all those things that prevent people from doing what they like to do most. I will be there again one day. I don't know when that will be, at the place that gives me the opportunity to breathe the air around the sport I love and always will.